All right, who represents the working class better, the right wing or the left wing, the Republicans or the Democrats? Let's debate. We got on the left, Wosny Lambre. He is a frequent TYT contributor. He's also a staff writer at The Ringer. And on the right, we have Ashton Cohen. He's a writer on Bold TV. He's also the host of the Electile Dysfunction podcast. I believe that's a pun we've used on TYT before as well. So we rather enjoy that. Good to have you both here.
Pleasure to be on.
Pleasure. I've actually never done this before. I've done so many TYT shows and segments. I've never been on the debate stage. My palms are sweaty.
All right, well, it's a slightly different kind of debate. There's no filibustering. You got to listen to the moderator, of course, and no personal attacks. But we're going to have largely a conversation, and these conversations have gone relatively well. But here, Ashton, let's start with you in this case.
Sure.
So why is the right wing more the party of the working class?
Okay, so I mean, I would start with sort of the proposition. I think the three of us agree with. Was a good buddy of mine, that the ruling establishment of both parties have not put the interests of working people front and center. They seem to be more interested in enriching themselves rather than actually representing the interests of working people. So the question kind of is like, which party sucks less? And I assume Woz would say Democratic Party. I would say the Republican Party. And I think one of the ways that we can look at this is by looking at the manifestation of these policies, looking at a place like California, or rural based, comparing that to a state like Florida, which is a red state. California likes to consider itself a model of progressive government. And if you look at what's happened in California, it ranks 49 out of 50 in terms of income inequality on the Gini coefficient. It's the most expensive place in the United States, in the continental United States, for housing. It's cost $1 million to afford a home here in Los Angeles, $1.5 million in a place like San Francisco, and you look at things like energy prices. It's the most expensive in the continental United States. Look at gas prices, most expensive in the continental United States. $7.50 I often see now in our gas stations. If you look at our school system, it's ranking lower and lower every year. We're number 45 in science, number 49 in math. And the place a lot of people have moved to, a lot of working class and middle class people have moved to, are like the evil red states of Texas and Florida, where you can afford a house for $300,000, $400,000 a year. And you get to keep 10% of your income on top of that. And one of the things I would love to ask you guys is, what exactly is progressive about charging, say, a 10% income on people who are making 50 grand, 60 grand, 70 grand a year? There is an argument to be made about maybe, enforcing that on people who are wealthy. But if you're making 60 grand a year, which is the average American income, California is probably the worst place you want to be.
Okay, so I like that Ashton did the supposition up front that both parties suck. Generally at TYT we agree with that, and I know Woz agrees with that. But Woz, now make the argument for why the left wing is a better representative of the working class.
I mean, if we're gonna use the idea of red states versus blue states as the model, let's use an actual red state, like say, I don't know, Mississippi. You look at the quality of life of poor and working people in Mississippi, it's way worse than it is in California. I don't think there's even an argument to be made that if you are poor and down on your luck, you'd rather live in California for a myriad of social services. Just your quality of life is way better. Florida, while it's a good example, is more of a purple state, we can all agree, than it is a pure red state. Somewhere like Mississippi or Arkansas or any of those places in the deep south where they are red up and down. State government is red. They're not in the national government. They send nothing but Republican politicians. Those poor and working class people get nothing. What I will say is that rhetorically, the right is more aligned with working class people. They tend to be a lot more conservative about social stuff than pie in the sky liberals, if you will, 100%. And I think rhetorically, with how the religiosity, some of the stuff about kids and the gays and the trans people, that is more aligned with working class people across racial lines than anything else. But policy wise, like the programs that will actually help people, stuff like the stimulus, stuff like universal pre-K, like they do like the only good thing de Blasio did in New York City, that's more in line with what working class people need. But however, we know the Democrats, how ridiculous they are. They're horrible at selling the stuff that they're actually good at. And I think the right is a lot better at selling this family values crap that they claim to care about, this religious stuff that they claim to care about. The stuff that Ashton's talking about, maybe we should have a more progressive tax. No right winger worth his salt would ever suggest that be the case. That we actually tax corporations for what they make, that we actually use that revenue to help the people that need it the most. No right winger would ever say that, although I think it's nice that Ashton is saying it here. And again, I do agree with his general point, right? But I think most of it is rhetorical when it comes to Republicans, and it's not policy based.
So Ashton, Woz is conceding to some degree that on some of the social issues that you guys might appeal more to the working class. But working class by definition is about economic issues because it's about class, right? And on economic issues, the Republican Party does not seem to have a great track record on being for the average man. So the Democrats can point to certain bills, with higher minimum wage. So not that they passed it, don't get me wrong, but that they theoretically are in favor of it. But is there anything you point on the Republican side that is in favor of the working class economically?
Yeah, let me just point out with the Mississippi example, there are obviously bad run states that are on the right, there are bad run states on the left. I picked California because that's the 5th largest economy in the world. It is the model of progressivism. On the other side, on the right, you have Florida and Texas. Florida being, I think, the 20th largest economy in the world. Texas is like 13th. So I do think they're fair comparisons. With respect to the progressive income tax, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily in favor of maybe enforcing around people who make like $1 million a year or more, but I'd be amenable to it if it was able to produce results. Whereas, so with respect to, I'm sorry, Sorry, Cenk. So your question was, what has the Republican Party done to economically to help working class? Well, I would say things like not having over-intrusive regulations. California is like the worst state to do business. It has some overburdensome regulations. Things like why is the gas price so high? Why are the gas taxes so high in California? There's no need for that. It only hurts middle-income people. If we want to look at it sort of nationally, let's put the states aside for a second. We had the 2020 election, and the majority of the people, the professions that were most represented were Biden voters, were people like college professors, 94% of whom voted for Biden, lawyers like myself, unfortunately. Vast majority voted for Biden, bankers, HR people. The most common professions to vote for someone like Trump was construction workers, janitors, custodians, maintenance people, electricians, right? And if you look at today, it used to be the case very much the Republicans were the party of the rich. In Reagan's reelection, I think about almost all the wealthiest counties in the United States, 8 of the top 10, I believe, in terms of income, were voted for Reagan, were Republican. Today, 26 of the 27 wealthiest counties in the United States vote for Democrat and have Democratic representatives. So I think people are seeing that their interests may be aligned if they're rich with the Democratic Party, and if they're not so rich, if they're making 50 grand, 60 grand a year, they're voting with their feet. They're going to red states and they're voting for red politicians. And now, we could also mention the Hispanics. I never thought that the Republicans would reach parity with in terms of competing for the Hispanic vote with Democrats. I thought that would be like 10 years down the line, maybe. But the fact that it's here now is pretty phenomenal.
So I'm the moderator here, so I'm not interested in the things. So Woz, let me ask you, the Democratic Party, when you look at the demographics of the voters, Ashton is correct that now folks with no college education have gone to the Republicans, and so now, for example, there's a big movement for white women that are college educated switching over to the Democrats over the last couple of decades, right? But you see the working class shifting.
My Twitter feed would confirm that.
And Latinos, Democrats in 2018 midterms had a 47-point advantage. It's now down to 3 points. So They lost 44 points in 4 years. That is stunning. So what is the Democratic Party doing wrong? Because clearly it's doing something wrong.
I think, to speak to what Ashton is saying, we're richer, more affluent, more educated people. Essentially, people who think the country is doing just fine because they personally are doing just fine. They think of the Democrats as better stewards of the capitalistic machine than the Republicans. Because if you are beholden to frothing at the mouth right-wingers who carry tiki torches in Virginia, there's this sense that like we can't count on you because those are the people you are beholden to. So yeah, I think that speaks to something real. The elites now see the Democratic Party as better shepherds as this god-awful system. They don't fundamentally think there's anything wrong with it, right? The people who do have an understanding that, one, the only people who get anything out of our system are the people who have everything already. And the only gains they think they can get is not allowing teachers to say trans in their schools, right? Like not allowing people to say, there were some bad white people back in the days. It doesn't mean that all of their offspring are now automatically evil people and axe murderers and racists and all of that. But no, we don't want our kids to learn that. That's what they feel empowered in, right? And so the people who are giving them that are Republicans. It is people like DeSantis. He's not delivering actual economic outcomes. He's not freaking building up roads and bridges and new jobs that are union jobs that you'll retire with a pension and be able to retire and have a life of dignity and dignified work. He ain't delivering that, but he can deliver stuff that's actually tangible to them, and that's what I think you're seeing in that shift. It's like they are giving them the low-hanging fruit, where the Democrats are condescending to them on the one hand. And then they're so beholden to the money, they can't do anything on the economic side. So that's what I think you're seeing with that shift. And when it comes to Hispanic voters, and I don't want to get controversial here, but a lot of the Hispanic and Latino people consider them to be absolutely non-black, more aligned with white European people, 100%. So this idea that Cubans in Miami would not identify with the white nationalist party, that seems to track perfectly well with what I know about a large swath of Latin culture. That's just 100% true. I'm growing up in New York City around Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. I'm talking about cats that are darker than me, Cenk, that'd be like, no, papi, I know black, I'm Dominican. So the idea that those folks would align with the party that's become more white nationalist in identity, that tracks with me. And again, if the Democrats are not gonna actually deliver, and even the stuff that they deliver, actually be able to communicate and sell it, right? Instead of writing a check, they say, oh, you get it back on your taxes. All of this backwards means testing nonsense they wanna do, they're gonna continue to lose those people.
So now let's get beyond the Republican and Democratic parties, because I think that you've both proven the point that they're, to some degree, we haven't touched the Republicans much, but that they're unmitigated disasters. So, and largely because they're both beholden to the money. But let's talk about right wing versus left wing. So Ashton, what are proposals that the right wing has for the working class that would help the working class, again, economically, not, hey, that helps the working class because they get to beat up somebody underneath them, right? But that actually materially affects their lives for the better.
So I would say, I recently saw one of the old Michael Moore documentaries, and he was very nostalgic about the fact how when he grew up in the 1970s, only one parent had to work. They could be able to afford to buy a home, a nice home in a nice area. They could afford European vacations. I think that's what the American dream is about, and I think that Republican states are the ones who are delivering that. We want affordable housing. If you want affordable housing, you can't have things like CEQA in California, which increased the cost of housing estimated like 30%. We want cheap energy prices. Whether I'm pretty agnostic in terms of what works, but the fact is what works right now is still fossil fuels. I don't know why progressives haven't jumped on the nuclear bandwagon, because that's a zero carbon producing thing, and that could produce a lot of our energy as well. I'm in favor of what works. Low taxes. It should be a place where immigrants like my family could be able to come start their business without overburdensome regulations, without things like, there was a story in the San Francisco Chronicle not too long ago where this Asian immigrant tried to set up an ice cream shop in San Francisco. He went like $300,000 down the hole because of all the complexities of the permitting process in San Francisco and the overburdensome regulations, and people could contest his ability to build something there. It's like, that's not conducive to working class people. If we want a country where everybody can become middle class and then wealthy one day, and that includes low taxes, easy to do business, affordable housing, affordable energy. You can't have a middle class without affordable energy, right? So those are, any policy that projects those things forward is pro working class, is pro middle class, and right now you're not seeing that so much in some of these progressive bastions, where limousine liberals are calling the shots. So the progressives, by the way, are more amenable to things like affordable housing and stuff of that nature, to their credit. But in terms of the establishment Democratic wing, the Nancy Pelosi's, the NIMBYism that you see in places like California, that's really an issue. And if you're comparing that to what Republicans are offering in some of these great states like Florida or Texas or Tennessee, where you're keeping more of your money, and it's way easier to be able to keep more of your money and to have a home, own a home, be able to take those vacations. One parent can work if she wants or he wants, and the other parent can stay at home with the kids. That's the kind of America that I think we all want.
So, Woz, before we get to the left wing, what is wrong with what Ashton is saying?
In theory, there's nothing wrong, right? If you want to move to some place in say West Virginia and buy a house, if you already have a good job, you can do so fairly affordably. However, a lot of those folks in West Virginia can't afford those homes. And there are no prescriptions being prescribed by the right wing to help those folks get into homes, and I'm not being condescending, and out of those trailer parks. Okay, like I'm being like literal here. Like, there is no program or policy being offered. How we achieved the greatest middle class the world has ever seen was government largesse, period. Those loans, those government-backed loans, and those low interest rates, and that land that we had all across this country that we just gave to folks was government largesse, period. Nobody on the right is prescribing that. Nobody is prescribing a government-based solutions to these economic woes that folks face in downtrodden places in both red and blue states. That's why I get annoyed by people like black nationalists who are like, oh, we were better when it was segregated and we had Black Wall Street and blah, blah, blah. The black man don't need no government. It's nonsense. It was good enough for the whites of this country. It'll be good enough for everybody else. That's how we achieved this stuff. The richest country in the freaking world stepped in on behalf of its citizens and basically paid for it. Period. That's what happened.
So, Woz, that's your critique of what Ashton said and a little bit of history thrown in. But okay, now let's go. Let me stick with you. What are left-wing proposals that would actually help the working class material?
I mean, where do we start? I would love to see a universal income. I would love to see a jobs guarantee. You see Biden's freaking construction bill get stalled by the likes of Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. But these are hundreds of thousands of jobs, union jobs, pensions, benefits that these folks would have, making our country better. Literally investing into making our country better. Yeah, those are left, and I'm not saying not Democratic Party proposals. I'm talking about those are left proposals, government-based economic solutions that will build up the country, right? And when working people fall behind, Again, these Wall Street cats are good. They will have their 5 yachts. No matter what we do, we need to step in for the people who need it the most.
Okay, Ashton, now you tell me what's wrong with what Woz just said.
Well, going to the last point, and this is something I think I've heard both of you speak about, is Wall Street is right now a product of Democratic policies, right? I mean, the majority of people on Wall Street voted for the establishment Democratic wing, right? So in terms of investing in poor areas, things like opportunity zones, I'm in favor of. I'm all about helping places outside the coasts, become more economically competitive. I think one of the ways you do that is being a place that's welcoming and nurturing to entrepreneurs, with low tax rates, with good education systems, where people can live and have a good quality of life and be able to have their own homes and all that, right? These are important things. In terms of government, and I think Woz mentioned government investing in people. Yeah, I mean, I guess in theory, sure, it would have to depend on what the programs are.
Okay, so then let's go back to politics and the parties as they are, not as we wish them to be. So Woz, if the Democrats win in 2024, the presidential election, and assume they win the House and the Senate, which I agree with you, sounds laughable, but assume that it happened. What would the working class have to look forward to?
Nothing. I mean, from Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi's Democratic Party, or Mayor Pete or whoever the hell they're gonna throw up there if they don't throw Biden up there.
Newsom.
There's Gavin Newsom, the pretty boy. Okay, cool, but show me proof that these people, when they have power, we could take it back again to Barack Obama, unprecedented momentum, unprecedented mandate. We're talking about momentum that has not been seen maybe since Reagan, okay? To do whatever the hell he wanted to do, okay? And he did what? He made the bankers whole. He got his buddies rich. Timothy Geithner got to be a 600 millionaire after he left that job. That's it. So I don't know how this iteration of the Democratic Party is something that working class people are supposed to get excited. Where's the proof? Just show me any proof or hope that these guys actually care about folks.
Okay. That was not very cheery. Now, Ashton, if the Republicans, Trump, DeSantis, whoever it might be, win and they win the House and the Senate, just same exact question, in 2024, what would the working class have to look forward to?
Yeah, so I mean, it does depend on who it is. I think for whatever Trump's flaws in his, up until COVID, we had about a $6,000 increase in the median family wage in this country, which was more than Bush, who I agree is one of the worst presidents of all time, and Obama achieved in 8 years. He achieved 3% economic growth in I think 2019. We need to be a place where people around the world, entrepreneurs around the world, move to, where they can start businesses, where they can grow their businesses, where they can and basically pay people more wages through the growth of their own wages. Through growth of their own industries. In terms, I'm a bit pessimistic on a lot of Republicans in Congress, the same way that you guys are about a lot of Democrats in Congress as well, which is kind of why, we're in this ruling gerontocracy. So I'm not sure exactly what some of their positions are going to entail, but it should be things along the lines of promoting growth, economic growth. Having a good immigration system that rewards people with skills, bring them over here, and get government out of the way so that they can flourish.
Okay, well, we're out of time, but I think that you guys have done a terrific job of thoroughly depressing the audience. So it doesn't look like there's a lot of help coming from the Republicans and the Democrats in 2024, but of course that's because, as you guys both rightly acknowledged, money rules, and so they're in the pocket of the donors, and I wish we had real debates a right wing versus left wing as opposed to Republican versus Democrat, the fake debates that happens on the national stage. But I appreciate you guys participating in this one. Everybody check out Woz at The Ringer. Everybody check out Ashton at Bold TV and the podcast Electile Dysfunction. Thank you both.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.